And with that, we are live and welcome to another edition of the Astro Weather. I am Robert Phoenix, and I'm about to be joined by my co-weather host, the amazing Jasper. Jasper, are you getting in on this today? Are you gonna help me out here? Come on, let's go. He'll take his time. Now, Jasper does like to enter from stage right. He has a methodology here, and so I have to clear his path just in case he decides he wants to get in on the action. Oh, you're going to come up the other way. All right. Well, let's go. Let's go. Here he is. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Astro Cat, Jasper. There he is. Yeah. Yeah. 14 years and rocking. Look at him. Look at him. Dedicated service to each and every one of you. All right. You do your thing, Jasper. You do your thing. Let's see. We had a great show last night. We were over on the Sirius Sports channel, and man, good show. We had Gracie from North Astrology, and her tweet was picked up by ESPN about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift's relationship, and that got my attention. So came up on my feed, and we started following each other. And she was a great guest last night. And then hour number two, we had Glenn Streeter come on and talk about all these interesting Aquarian technologies that are being used in the realm of sports, performance, and healing. So it was a really good show. And it's over on Sirius Sports. If you haven't found that yet, I suggest you check it out. All right, but why don't we jump into the old Astro Weather here? Oh, by the way, if you want to, you can buy me a cup of coffee. And everybody that's bought me a cup of coffee so far, thank you for your cups of coffee. Truly appreciate it. Especially since I'm demonetized here. All right, let's get into it. All right, guys. So there's a lot of really strange shit going on. When is there not a lot of strange shit going on? I was reading this story today. This is going to be my lead in. Well, look at that. The sun is getting closer to the ascendant here later in the day. You notice how over the summertime the sun was really right in the 12th house, and it's getting closer to the ascendant later in the day, which is I think good, and actually dovetails with one of our stars of the day. We got multiple stars of the day today. Anyway, when I got up this morning, I read this bizarre story, which I'm going to cover a bit more over on 15 minutes, but I think it is appropriate to bring into the conversation about where we're at with the Mars South Node conjunction. We're right here, right? We're right at this point where things could get hairy. We had the Trump trial start yesterday with the Mars South Node conjunction, and Mars is going through Trump's second house, where he has both Jupiter and Neptune. So I think transiting Mars is conjuncting Trump's natal Neptune, which isn't all that good. I mean, clearly it paints him as a bit of a scapegoat in some ways. Right? Like that's the effect of Mars transit across Neptune in one's chart. You can be blamed for things that aren't really your fault entirely. So there's that, right? But I was reading this story about a journalist in Philadelphia who was an activist journalist. I think you know what that means. This was a journalist who saw the world through a very particular lens and then wrote about it and commented on it through that lens. And 2 years ago, Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, wrote on Twitter or tweeted on Twitter or X, if you voted for Joe Biden, you'll be dead in 2 years. Or you'll be dead in a year. You'll be dead in a year. That's what he said. You'll be dead in a year. So this guy, I forget his name. It's not even really all that important. but we'll cover it more in 15 minutes. So this guy who hadn't touched that tweet, because it's been up for 2 years now, and he called Scott Adams out on the tweet and laughed at him on Twitter. 2 days later, the guy has 7 bullets in him. Okay, that's just weird, right? I mean, to me, now we're getting into that Mars South Node conjunct Pluto or square Pluto territory. There was even, I believe, a senator who had some information on the mRNA stuff, and his plane went down and he died. I mean, that's a few days ago. But we're really looking at this Mars Pluto square and the South Node conjunction. Now, apparently, he got into a quote unquote lover's quarrel, and the police have texts and emails, and they believe that meth was involved. And his lover's quarrel was, of course, somebody who shared his same equipment, and something went off the rails. But to me, right, remember I was talking about this grudge energy, this vendetta energy. I was talking about this on Sunday night, and clearly this guy had a grudge against Scott Adams, and then somebody had a grudge and a vendetta against him. And so we're in this really weird territory, right? So in your own life, I would say be cautious. Be cautious around what you're putting your aggressive, and I'll use the word aggressive, attention into. Right? That's what I would be. That's what I would be concerned about. Sorry, Virgo moon kicking in the other room. I would be really cautious. Right? Be self-aware. Use some discernment here. Right? We're in to coin a phrase from John Lennon, who's a Libra, by the way. And I don't really believe in karma per se, but we're in instant karma territory. This is what this is about, right? So you have the opportunity to do something different. Mars is inching its way into that trine with Saturn. And that Mars-Saturn trine has a much longer view. It's not about, well, let's take care of this now, right? Let's take care of this now. No, it is about, okay, let's put this on the back burner. I know I'm boiling, but let things play out. Let things play out. One of the listeners of the show, my buddy Steve in Harper, who's a Scorpio, he shared something with me. He said, every time I've ever had a beef with somebody and I got screwed over, all I had to do was wait. All I had to do was wait. And then within a matter of time, didn't matter how long it was, sometimes it was shorter, sometimes it was longer, but eventually things would catch up with that person. They would catch up with them. That's kind of the energy here, right? This is very tempting. Very tempting. But if you can just wait a little bit, just wait till that Mars moves into Scorpio, starts trining that Saturn, a much longer term solution plan and application of one's energy becomes much more clear at that point. This is a flashpoint right here. We are in flashpoint territory. So sit back today and watch the movie. You're going to see people lose their shit. You're going to see people angry. We got big vendetta energy. V for vendetta. That is the operative sort of word here. And then both of the South Node and Mars are conjunct Spica. Spica is an interesting fixed star, and it kind of fits in with Libra in a lot of ways. right? It has a lot to do with things like uh, aesthetics and design and more. So these things are kind of being aggressively promoted. You know what I would? You know what I would? Uh, I would. I would link this in a lot of ways to the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift affair, right? Because you have this fixed star, which is theoretically amplifying, all of these energies. And I think Travis Kelce does have his Mars in Libra. And Jason Whitlock, again, this is so. I was watching Jason Whitlock last night, and he had a brilliant fucking idea. Because what Jason Whitlock has been able to kind of unearth here, and I'm on board with him. I totally agree with this. Is that this is another plank of the social Marxist program, right? They want Taylor Swift to be the face of the NFL. That's what they want. They want Taylor Swift to be the face of the NFL. And Taylor Swift, of course, she's a Democrat. She just did this video about women's rights and all of these things that are so important. She had a little sit down with her mommy and her daddy, and she was on the verge of tears. And her daddy is clearly a conservative banking type, mommy clearly in her corner. So what, is the plan here to try and amass a number of NFL voters, wives, girlfriends, or we're talking the female vote, let's be honest here, and move them into Taylor Swift territory, into Democratic territory? You have to ask the question, right? You have to ask that question. And what Jason Whitlock, he doesn't talk about the march forward through the cultural institutions, which is social Marxism, but this is exactly what's happening. And he's taking a long-term view, and he's like, you know what? I don't like what's happening with football. I don't like what's happening with America. Why don't we take a page out of the Bud Light boycott and boycott the Super Bowl? Basically, we're not going to watch the Super Bowl. Now, those are hundreds of millions of eyeballs. It's a really interesting opening by Jay. That, to me, that is the Mars-Saturn trine. That is the long play. That is the long play versus the immediate incendiary gotcha or reactive moment. To me, it's like a kind of a cheap Saturday night special that'll backfire and blow up in your face. Now, there are elements with a Mars-Pluto square where you know that you're in for the fight of your life. I think that's clear with what's going on with Trump's chart, the conjunction with Neptune, squaring, transiting Pluto. He's in for the fight of his life. He's got Pluto transiting his, let me see, it's 8th house. That's big. That's big. Those are actually, like, this is a time, how many life attempts have been placed on Trump? A lot. There was one when he was in 2016 when he was running, and I saw this aspect in his chart, and I said he's a target. And then there was a guy that was arrested out. I think it was his rally in Las Vegas back in 2016. He was going to kill him. This is that kind of energy, by the way, especially with Mars on top of Trump's Neptune. So, do they want to protect their asset and keep running him out there, or do they want to burn the asset, as they say in Spookville? So this is a very incendiary time. We're talking today, tomorrow, and really until the 12th, 13th, when Mars moves into Scorpio and starts to trine Saturn. So try to have a long-term view. Right? It's really easy right now to demand justice and kind of go all in. It may not really be in your best interest. Just wait. And I know I say this a lot, but there are days for action and there are days for waiting. And today is kind of a put it on the back burner and wait day. Mercury at 27 Virgo and really into that grand trine, which we've talked about. Mercury trining Uranus. So a lot of insight into fast, insight, swift, sudden, quick, fast, boom, getting to the bottom of things very quickly, solving problems with rapidity. If you've got any health issues today, self-diagnosis can lead to some wonderful results. And a lot of it also, I'm going to throw this out there because Mercury and Virgo is critical. It's a critical energy. And for a brief moment at the beginning of the day, we've got to trine with the moon because of Mercury's mathematical relationship to Libra, right? So today, early in the day here in the States and in this part of the world, Canada, Mexico, South America, if you're listening, this is a really interesting aspect. And I would say, because Mercury Virgo is so critical, and it can't really get out of its critical nature, but with this quick trine to the moon in Gemini, you might be able to flip a different switch, or you might be able to hold two realities or two potentialities at the same time. One is critical and the other is, I would say, hopeful or optimistic. The two are not mutually exclusive. Sometimes we have to break things down, and that critical part of our nature can serve us, right? But then we also have to build things back up again if we're breaking down, sort of like what happens with your gut and your biome. And of course, Virgo rules the gut and the biome. You have to build it back up, right? Once you break it down through antibiotics, you got to build it back up again. But this is one of those days, especially early on, where both things are equally true, that you can be both critical and I'll use the word cautiously optimistic at the same time, right? And what does that look like? What it looks like is that you are trusting your choices. You are trusting your path to action. Even though with Neptune opposing Mercury, you might have people tell you, oh, no, that's not going to work. Or no, you're a fool. Or why do you believe that? No, watch out for that. Watch out for the voices in your head, because the voices in your head probably belong to somebody else. So this is a day where you can attend to making really good, healthy choices and changes. You can do it on a dime, not price-wise, although maybe it could be price. Virgo's pretty thrifty. But I'm talking about money. I'm talking about time-wise. You can do it on a dime. It's one of those rare moments where we have two planets that are ruled, or two signs ruled by the same planet, that are talking with each other. And you usually don't get that. You don't usually get that dialogue with Mercury and or Virgo and Gemini. But today is one of those rare days. Very interesting. The other thing too, and I'll throw this out there, this is also a good day. If you're a little Machiavellian, you're going to hear things today. You're going to hear things today that you may want to use at a future date. I'm just saying, right? I'm just saying. So when somebody is talking with you, even if you don't necessarily vibe with that person 100%, and I know this sounds manipulative, but sometimes if you read Machiavelli, you'll understand how the rules of the world and how many people live by them. I would listen. I would encourage people to talk. Oh, really? Even if you don't think it's all that, well, here's what I would say. Even though you may not agree with them, or you may find what they're talking about in some ways to be morally reprehensible, I would say, oh, really? I find that interesting. That's really interesting. And especially, and I don't often go there, but we're in this time where we need every single bullet in our belt, right? Including information that may be valuable later. Don't kid yourself. Things like that are important. They're very important. And sometimes your livelihood can even depend on it, especially if you have to prove it somewhere. So if you're having conversations and somebody starts to kind of get a little verbal diarrhea, don't give them the Imodium. Let them talk. Let them talk. And you might actually learn something too. I mean, if we want to take the moral high ground, you might actually learn something about yourself in the process. So it's not just completely manipulative. You go, oh yeah, I know. I've noticed how I do that. Yeah, it's not a good look. Tell me more. Right? These two things are not mutually exclusive. So I think that's another part of today's energetic play. We're saying au revoir to Venus and Virgo coming up right here on good old Regulus. And that means that there are important relationships. So if there are people in your life that you feel strongly about, let them know. Let them know. This is this period of time. Black Moon Lilith is right on Regulus, right? And I think there can be some very interesting healing, especially because we have this, wide sextile going on with Chiron, Juno, and then Juno, of course, conjuncting with Venus. Those relationships in your life that are important, let them know. Let those people know. Let them know. Do something nice for them. Be generous. Give them something that lets them know that you're thinking about them and that they're important in your life. And what's interesting here with Venus, it's moved into the Yod territory. So by doing that, you may be unconsciously connecting these 2 points that are just kind of driving the background program, and can solve some real issues around somebody feeling not as perhaps appreciated or wanted. The conjunct with Pluto might be, well, all you do is just use me for my money and my resources, and that may not be completely articulated or spoken about, but it's kind of in the mix. But if you recognize these people and give them their due, you'll be solving a lot of very interesting issues. And it'll make you feel better too. I mean, just don't fake it, right? Don't fake it. Try to tap into your heart around it. But this is interesting, very interesting energy. And of course, we get these the momentary square, just because the moon is by degree, it is in square with Venus. But as the day goes on, it will move out of that square. And we do have this Venus-Uranus square. And sometimes you can be pleasant and kind, and you can be loving and acknowledging, and that can be disruptive. It doesn't always have to be disruptive in a bad way. Although my mind just flashed on this one YouTube video. I'm sure you guys have seen it, right? You've seen this poor bastard in Mexico who hires this guy to play his guitar and serenade his girlfriend, or what he thinks is his girlfriend, and she's up on like the second floor of this building, and all these people are around, and the Canción is singing this plaintive love song, right? And he's down there below having this Cyrano de Bergerac moment, and she pops out and she looks at him, and she's naked, or she's got like a little tiny tee on, and then she goes away from the window, and then there's a dude that's sleeping with her, right? And he pops out, and it's just one of those moments. And the guy just puts his head in his hands and starts weeping, right? That's kind of a Venus-Uranus square. That's disruptive, but not in a good way. I mean, that's what we think of, but there can be, he tried. Maybe he wasn't really disruptive. Maybe he should have done something different, like, I don't know, hire a hitman. Okay, what else do we have here? Just hang in there, man. Like, hang in there. Don't do your best not to take the bait. Watch other people take the bait, though. Ooh, over the next 3-4 days, a lot of bait taken. And then you got this whole thing going on with Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy and what's happening. We've got the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department. They're basically in a kind of wrapped up in a big white Glad garbage bag, and then they have all this fencing around. That's significant. That is very significant. Venus will be moving into opposition closer with Saturn. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, and we'll look at the effects of that. All right, there's your astro weather for today. And if you're in another part of the world, if you're trying to get to sleep tonight. I don't think that that's going to be, well, what do we got? Well, yeah, the Neptune Mercury opposition can make it difficult to sleep. But because that Mercury's restless over there in Virgo, try to quiet your mind a little bit. And, to me, here's what I do for sleep. Sometimes I read things. Reading will always put me to sleep at night. I'll get about 3 or 4 pages in, it's like out go the lights. But I also listen to things, but I listen to specific things at night that allow me to get to sleep. And sometimes either consciously or subconsciously with an aspect like this, if you're listening, right? So for me, when I hear somebody narrating Thomas Sowell's history of Black culture, right? It sort of feeds me. The noise feeds me, and I'm getting something subliminally. I mean, that's how I go to sleep. I've always done that. I've always fallen asleep to either the TV or the radio, and it might be the white noise, but it has to be something specific. I can't listen to just everything. So I'm just giving you some of my tips if you're having a hard time sleeping out there, you're in another part of the world. Okay, let's check out our stars of the day. I did something a little bit different today because it's kind of interesting. So I have 2 people who are the star of the day or stars of the day because they were born on the same day and their lives are really fucking different. A tale of 2 charts. Over here, we have the Reverend Al Sharpton. And over here, we have Dennis Eckersley, former Major League Baseball player. I couldn't think of 2 more dissimilar people. So number one, they're born on at different times. So Al Sharpton, 10 p.m. Dennis Eckersley, he's part of the Dawn Patrol. He's a double Libra. Al Sharpton, born in Brooklyn. Dennis Eckersley, born in Oakland. Right. So they're really coastal oppositions. And even though Dennis Eckersley does not have, he's got some planets above the horizon. They're not completely opposite. Like if Eckersley was completely opposite, he'd have his planets here. But that's just an astrological observation. What's interesting about both these men, right, is how their charts really get played out. Dennis Eckersley is a force. He's a force. If you ever watch him play baseball, this is what he would do. He would strike you out and he'd point his finger at you. And Eck, they called him the Eck. And Dennis Eckersley had a major problem with addiction in his life. He's an athlete, Mars in Capricorn. Like Eck had a great run, but he had a very difficult home life. You can see this. I would say that in some ways, Al Sharpton might have had an easier home life. And I don't even really know what happened to Al Sharpton when he was growing up. But with the Sun and Juno in the 4th house, I would say he had an easier home life than Eck. Eck's brother went to jail, went to prison for I think drug trafficking, right? So Dennis grew up, I think he was raised in Hayward, hardcore blue collar family. But Dennis Eckersley had a major alcohol problem. And you can see this, and I've talked about this before with Mars, Neptune squares, where addiction comes into play. So Dennis Eckersley basically has 2 careers. He has a career where he comes up with the Cleveland Indians. He's kind of a phenom, and then he's problematic. He's like a ticking time bomb. And then he gets traded to the Boston Red Sox. And eventually he literally washes out because he has this major drinking problem. And eventually he gets sober and he is resurrected with the Oakland Athletics and basically has a Hall of Fame career from that point forward. And you can see this, like he's a force. He's a total force. He's a double Libra. And even with Juno here behind his Sun, it's the potential for something new, a new start, right? And Neptune in the first house is also very emblematic of his struggle with substances. Al Sharpton, he has the South Node in Cancer in the first house, right? He's a Cancer rising. But what has he got going on? What has he got with Mars? To me, these are all professional relationships. One of the things that there's this really interesting story that, if you can still find it, in the New York Times, and it speaks to the T-square in Al Sharpton's chart and legality, right? Like the seventh house is also legality and dealing with things like judgments and lawsuits. Lawsuits can come out of the seventh house as well, right? Somebody is filing something against you. So there was a trial in New York City, and it had to do with the IRS. It was the IRS, state of New York, and Al Sharpton's finances. And I read through this article, very long article, it's a while back. And Al Sharpton is one kg motherfucker, right? And it's that Mars Neptune square. Like he was slippery. He was so slippery, and even with the Jupiter Neptune square. So I don't think Sharpton has Eckersley's addiction issues, maybe addiction to power, but he doesn't have Eckersley addiction issues, right? Eckersley, what you see with Dennis Eckersley is what you get. You see what you see is what you get. Al Sharpton's not the same. When you get into that article on Al Sharpton and his trial, he can't even define his own home, right? He's rigged everything up so that he doesn't own anything. He doesn't own his suits. He like the judge goes through and really tries to pick him apart and say, well, how did you get this suit? Somebody gave it to me. Like in Al Sharpton's world, everything was given to him. And I don't think that that's too far from the truth, right? He's got Jupiter in the second house, gets everything he needs. Everything he needs. And when it comes under some kind of, circumspection or dissection or spotlight, he's shifty. That's where his Neptune goes to. He's totally shifty. And he's got affiliations, right? He's got connections. He's got partnerships. And Eckersley is not the same way. Not at all. Eckersley has, I would say in a lot of ways, Dennis Eckersley has a harder chart than Al Sharpton. And Al Sharpton has done really well in life. The guy's worth millions. And he ran for president once. And this is a dude that, basically made his name on the back of Tawana Brawley. And then that was just another big Jupiter conjunct Uranus square Neptune square Mars fucking hoax. Look at Eck's chart. He's got Saturn in the second house. He's got Venus and Scorpio in the second house. He's got Black Moon Lilith there. He's got a lot of tragedy. He adopted this daughter. Her name is Alexandria. She got pregnant, went out to the woods and fucking had her baby in the woods. I mean, his life, I could make an astrological case that Dennis Eckersley's life, it was harder just based on his chart than Al Sharpton's. Now, Al Sharpton may have grown up in Brooklyn, but I think very quickly he learned how to work things. And he's got all these planets in the fifth house. One of the things I guarantee you that Al Sharpton has, I wouldn't say mastered, but he can really lean into it, that it's all a game. It's all a game. Like when he was on trial, it was just a game. He was just moving everything around, right? Al Sharpton plays games. He's a game player. Even with Saturn here, he became very good at playing games and pumping the system. And he has Pisces on the midheaven, so he's always going to appeal to sort of the voice. He's always going to appeal to the people that are underrepresented, or the people that are downtrodden, or the people that need their EBT card recharged. Right? I mean, that's Al Sharpton like created that. And you have it's Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and then a whole host of grifters. Now, don't get me wrong, there are grifters that don't look like Al Sharpton. Trust me, there are grifters that don't look like Al Sharpton, but he is an archetypal grifter. And Pisces on the midheaven, I think, is very helpful for that. Now, with Eck, he's got Jupiter and Uranus in his 10th house, which as an athlete, I think could be good. But he also has his South Node here, conjunct the midheaven. So what you know about Dennis Eckersley, you'll know about it, warts and all, like all of his struggles and the shit with his brother and the shit with his adopted daughter and his alcoholism. It's all out there, right? It's all out there. And for Al Sharpton, you would think that on a personal level, the South Node, people would see it, but he is partnered up. He's partnered up with powerful people, and they both have Mars in Capricorn. So they both have the ability to overcome a lot of trials and travails and tribulation. I just think Eckersley has had more. I think he's had a lot more. And even with this Mars Chiron conjunction, both men are dealing with, don't get me wrong, I think Al Sharpton looked around and said, he looked around his environment, he surveilled his environment, and he said, I got to get the fuck out of here, right? Like he recognized, I think, that there was probably an economic disparity, professional discrepancy between him and what he wanted and his surroundings. Al Sharpton made deals. This is where his alliances are. Eck is different, right? They both have it. And so I think Eckersley, in a lot of ways, had to really overcome his roots. And look, I'll say this about Al Sharpton. Don't underestimate him. He's a fighter, right? Like if you were on the left and Al Sharpton was going to take up your cause, you would want him. Of course, he'd want to get paid, but you would want him. That is the Sun-Mars square. And it's a different kind of fight, right? For Eckersley, it's more personal. It comes out of where he comes from. So these are very interesting charts. Two men born on the same day, out, two different aspects of the day. Like Sharpton, he's below the horizon. You don't really, what do we really know about Al Sharpton except what he bloviates on? We don't really know a lot about him. You dig deep and you'll find some shit about him, like his connections with the FBI, an informant. That's all below the horizon stuff. That's all Neptune square stuff, by the way. We know a lot more about Eckersley, right? We know a lot more about him because of his sun. We know a lot more about him because of the South Node up here. And even with Pluto in the 11th house, that's sports. That's the team. And Eckersley is an agent of change. He's a change agent. When he went to Oakland, he turned the A's around, right? It was his fire. The other thing that's really interesting about Eckersley is how, again, the bouncing back from adversity. When Kirk Gibson hit that home run off him, which made me sick to my stomach, in the 1988 World Series, it would have been, Dennis Eckersley was just, a few years into his recovery. If you were going to fucking drink, that would have been the time. Because that pitch lost them the game and ostensibly the World Series. And he came back, right? That is the Sun-Mars square. And I guess even with Al Sharpton, he'll go through periods where he's rolling in the mud and he doesn't give a shit. He just keeps on rolling, right? Sun-Mars square. But Eckersley became this transformer for the teams that he was on. Turned Oakland into a winner. Then he leaves Oakland and goes to the St. Louis Cardinals. I think he gets a World Series with the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken. Becomes their closer. So he's a really interesting character. And I would say in his own way, I don't like him, but Al Sharpton is an interesting character. Go read that New York Times. If you can find that New York Times or the New York Post story about his tax trial, you'll find out how cagey Al Sharpton is. He's really fucking cagey. And both these guys have Mercury and Scorpio. Focus, right? They're able to focus. And that's one of the keys to Mercury and Scorpio. It's just a matter of channeling it, right? For Eckersley, I think it took time with the Mercury, Jupiter square, Mercury, Uranus square. I think for Al Sharpton, there's a different kind of focus. He's kind of leaned into it, right? They're very different positions. Very, very different positions. So there you go. A tale of two charts. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Okay, I might even put this up on Twitter. Might be fun. Well, that's your Astro Weather for today. Don't forget our sponsor, True Hemp Science, the only sponsor of the show. And it is some of the best CBD you will ever have. The sleep gummies help my mother out at night. She's in pain, has a hard time sleeping. Sleep gummies work great. They work great for me. I didn't take one last night because I didn't need one. But if I need that little extra sort of fairy dust to get me to the land of Nod, I'll take a sleep gummy. And they've got a whole series of CBD elixirs that have been specifically crafted by Chris. And just go to truehempscience.com. If you spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, 15MINS, and you will get a goodie bag with your order. And if you spend $150 or more, guess what? You get free shipping. And there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you feel like buying me a cup of coffee, I have a link here in the show notes. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the Astro Weather. Please hit like and subscribe. If you're here, I hope you subscribe to this, because I've been stuck at fucking 13,500 subscribers for the last 3 months. And I know that more of you are watching this show on a daily basis than when I started off. Maybe not the first day. The first day was epic. About 3,000 people. And then all of a sudden YouTube was like, oh, we're going to cut that in half. So please subscribe, right? I'm up against a battle with the algorithms here. And I do need your assistance. I don't always ask for it, but I need your assistance. My goal, and it's a humble goal, is I want to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of the year, right? I want to hit the 20,000 mark. I've been doing this for fucking 13 years now. I've got 2 million views on this channel. And I want you guys to take it to the people that run the algorithms. Okay, let's do this. I'm rallying the troops. That's my Mars and Libra. Mars is conjunct my Venus today. I better be careful. All right, thanks for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day. Please join me. We will be on Rumble one more day. I got my site back up. I need to make some tweaks. So I know it's not easy for some of you people that do the Rumble side, but we'll do Rumble one more day, and we'll have 15 minutes of flame back up and running. That'll be my first order of business after I complete the show over on Rumble. All right, thanks. Take good care. Use your hair. Your hair. Use your hair. Yes, use your fucking hair. You don't use it enough. There's super power in your hair, even if you have just a little bit of it. Love it. Use it. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart to stay up on what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have a great walk and a blessed day. See ya. Bye for now.